The best minutes I've ever done, I'll just tell you, man, it was unbelievable.
40 of the best minutes that Jim Fetzer's ever done. I hope you can bring that in and out, bring it in and out, right? Can you do that? Because I'm going to come up real close to you. I'm going to come up right close to you because I want to tell you that you're going to be talking to a guy that has got so much of this material together. He's put all of the pieces so you can see the big picture. How can we do that? Well, churning on the set, taking this thing from one area to the next, to the next, to the next, putting it together with all of the pieces that you know is valid, and then we'll have a chance to change the world. Jim, we've been friends for a period of time. You see the death dumps that are going on overhead. You see the CIA, which is the enforcement arm of the CFR, hiring evergreen contractors, contract killers, to dump this stuff. What do you think about the stuff that's going on overhead?
Well, I think it's pretty creepy, Anthony. It's not been a subject I myself personally have done a lot of work on, but I think it's very, very disconcerting that there's so many reports of barium and aluminum and all sorts of other elements being dumped onto, for example, the forests here in the western part of the United States, which is going to destroy our evergreen resources. And who knows how much damage they're doing to the human body.
Isn't it outrageous that evergreen air is destroying evergreen? Destroying evergreen. Who's paying for it? Jim, who's paying for it?
The taxpayer, undoubtedly.
What?
Anthony. We're paying for it, no doubt about it. Covert black budgets, we never know where our money goes. All this stuff is being paid for by the American taxpayer,
no,
I'm sorry to say.
Come on, get real. I mean, you're saying that the people are paying for their own killing?
Absolutely. That's the way it goes in America today.
Well, but I mean, the stuff that they're dropping on us isn't all that bad. I mean, it's good for us, right?
When's the last time that the American military had anything to do with something that was good for us, Anthony? I'm sorry to say. It looks as though it's very damaging, very serious. There's some reports of Morgellons, for example, being a result of what they're dumping, that there can be all kinds of diseases involved here, as well as elements that are damaging to life on Earth.
Dr. frigging Frankenstein is dropping this crap on us, right? I mean, in fact, well, Frankenstein had good motives. He was trying to do something. He's trying to create a superior being. But these sons of bitches aren't trying to do that. They're trying to take us out. I mean, isn't that, and aren't they, Doctor?
Well, it's very strange, to try to get a handle on this, because those who believe that there's a massive world depopulation program certainly seem to have their case supported by chemtrails and everything associated with it.
You mean death dumps? You got to get that right. Yeah. I mean, the lingo of the.
And then we have, of course, the Fukushima disaster, dumping all this radiation into the Pacific Ocean. We have the BP disaster, which is causing one of the great ecological calamities of all time in the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, we have all this depleted uranium floating around the Middle East, especially in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, Anthony. Do you realize many of these fundamentalists who've been supportive of these wars don't even realize that that's the home of the mythical Garden of Eden, and we're rendering it inhabitable for 4.5 billion years, Anthony, which happens to correspond to the estimated scientific age of the Earth.
This is the Garden of Eden. Will you say Eden? Ending? The Garden of Eden? Ending? I mean, it's... they're taking us out. I mean, God, from the Garden of Eden to the Garden of Eden to the Garden of Ending. I mean, this is all upside down, Jim.
I have so much trouble envisioning that there could be an effort to reduce the world's population from around 6 billion to much closer to 2 or even less. But there are indications that may be, even if it's unintended, the effect of many of the operations that are taking place in the world today.
Jim Fetzer, I mean, my God, the man just walked over there who knows so much about so much. I mean, about the dropping of the towers, the Twin Towers. Oh, and that one tower we know, man, it must have been a huge plane that hit Building 7, just wiped it out. Tell us about, God, whoa.
Building 7
What?
may be the most robust building ever designed by the hand of man. It was erected over 2 enormous electrical generators providing electricity for lower Manhattan, Anthony. The steel support beams in that tower were solid steel. Even in the Twin Towers, they had hollowed out centers at the core. Solid steel beams, however, were used in Building 7, which was clearly a classic controlled demolition. Of course, it was hit by no aircraft. It had no jet-based fuel fires. The claim has been made that it had some diesel fuel tanks, which is true, but diesel is non-explosive and burns at a relatively low temperature, Anthony. So they haven't been able to explain away what happened
like burning kerosene,
Building 7. Diesel, I think, actually has a lower temperature than kerosene.
A lower temperature? Well, kerosene is supposed to be Jet A fuel. Was supposed to burn the Twin Towers, and to melt, they melted the steel air. I mean, you could pour Jet A fuel on steel for the next 1,000 years. It wouldn't do a damn thing. It would be like that building in Hiroshima that stood up.
That's basically right. Jesse Ventura has a gift for making complex point in a simple way, and he observes that his camping stove burns propane, which has a higher temperature than kerosene, and yet it doesn't melt when he uses it on his camping trips.
Well, maybe it was a higher temperature. Maybe it was a camping, stove that was in. That lit up there inside the World Trade Center. The camping stove took out the steel, and then it melted it down, and then suddenly exploded in the air, and we see this dust. Toxic dust is almost like from the toxic toilets above.
NIST actually studied 236 samples of steel that they selected from ground zero, Anthony, and they discovered 233 had not been exposed to temperatures above 500 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature of an ordinary office fire, and the other 3 not above 1,200 degrees. So as you say, those fires could have burned forever, and that steel would not have weakened, much less melted. It's a preposterous story they've told us. It's a fabrication, a fake, a fraud, a gross deception to try to convince a naive and scientifically illiterate public here in the United States.
One can never underestimate the intelligence of the American public. I mean, the stupid out there, dumb, stupid. I mean, the sheeple, they're going along like lemmings into the sea of socialism, and they're dropping, and they're looking up at the sky, and they're breathing in this crap. How about
do they think it's good for them, Anthony? Those I know who are paying attention obviously are quite alarmed, but it's astounding that the American military hasn't addressed the issue, because surely it knows what's going on. In fact, it's very clear that the American military itself has to be conducting the chemtrail operation.
Well, the FAA gives a special deal. I mean, they sort of let things slide, a little for Evergreen. Evergreen is the air company. I mean, they bought up Air America. Of course, Air America was doing a hell of a good job bringing in that necessary, heroin. I mean, guys have got to have a fix, right? I mean, the guys that got hooked up on heroin, I mean, they were selling that stuff for, like $10 a vial. What was it over there in Vietnam? What? $5? What is MPC?
Military pigs.
$5 military to get a shot of heroin.
Anthony, today the CIA is the biggest drug running operation in the world.
No,
In fact,
shocked.
that appears to be a principal reason why we're in Afghanistan and protecting the poppy crops. Many Army officers have returned in disgust because they weren't allowed to destroy them, but we're actually nurturing them for the benefit of the agency, which is making money hand over fist. This is closely related to why we have not legalized drugs in this country, which is the obvious thing to do. You legalize them, you market them, you standardize them, you get a huge amount of revenue, you stop having this deficit you're spending on criminalizing recreational use of drugs, destroying families, making ordinary citizens prisoners.
Well, isn't that their job? I mean, aren't they just doing their job, Jim?
Their job is to make massive profits running drugs, it turns out, Anthony. That's the biggie, the big secret. Peter Dale Scott has several books about this, by the way. And I think he's absolutely right.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked at what I'm hearing from this man. Jim is supposed to be, be on target. He's not. You're not really supposed to hear this sort of conversation. Just for sort of, it's like the judge saying, "Forget what you just heard. Skip this. Let's go on to something."
Well, Anthony, it's even worse than that. I mean, America has become the greatest aggressor nation in the world. If you go back and trace our recent history in the mid to late 20th century, the names of Chile, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, Vietnam.
That's not guacamole, right?
I like guacamole. Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. I mean, 50,000 American troops and 2 million Vietnamese died there, and for what?
I am shocked. I thought that was all justified. I mean, weren't we trying to save the people?
The closest I've been able to come to our reason for being in Vietnam was given by Walter Cronkite during a half-hour special broadcast in 1968.
Wasn't he the voice of the Owl of Moloch?
Never repeated again, Anthony, in which he showed a map of the continental shelf off of the coast of Vietnam and show it had already been subdivided by the great international oil companies because they believed it was rich with petroleum resources. And in fact, since the war has wound down, every now and then I would pick out a little tiny article that say Dutch Shell had leased another of these many tracts off the coast of Vietnam.
I am absolutely shocked. This is the most respected journalist in America, Walter Cronkite. Isn't or concrete or whatever. He is the voice of the Owl of Moloch. The Owl of Moloch, where they sacrifice the children. They have to sacrifice children for the power that they get for this Illuminati. I mean, they're out there at the Bohemian Grove. These are good people, presidents, Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski. I mean, we're talking about some respected, fine people from the New York Times.
Yes, if you read the Franklin scandal, you discover most of them are involved in pedophilia. It's shocking to me, Anthony, that this should be the case. I've never understood the attraction of having sex with children.
Who wrote that book?
If I'm going to be engaged in sex, I want it to be with a mature woman who knows what she's doing, not a child.
Oh my goodness! I mean, but
that's a shocking thought, though, isn't it?
Cover-up that Senator, who wrote that?
No, I don't remember the name, but it's.
Horowitz is blasting this guy who wrote the Franklin cover-up, and my friend, my good friend, and God bless you, brother, we're doing your job.
Everyone I know who has looked into this more than I has confirmed that it's straight scoop there in the Franklin cover-up, and it's really disgusting, Anthony. I mean,
But the fellow who wrote the Franklin cover-up, and Ted Gunderson, and Alex Jones, and myself are all being blasted by Horowitz and his lady friend. As agents, but then, and I suppose, I guess you always knew that I was some way affiliated with all this stuff, according to these people, maybe.
And I gather, since I talk about the Zionist dimension of 9/11, that I must figure in there somewhere too, Anthony. Well, because it's very clear that these neocons were very much Zionist. Many of them had joint U.S.-Israeli citizenship. I actually spoke during a freedom rally on the grass in front of the Capitol building on the 15th of April, 2008, and called for the resignation from government of any person who had been appointed with joint citizenship, because how can you possibly know that their loyalty to the other country doesn't outweigh their loyalty to the United States? None of these people should be in our government.
Oh, listen, the Zion Nazis, they have a place. I mean, it's been said by some that maybe a couple of the people around Horowitz were involved with the Mossad. But I mean, let's not talk about that stuff, right? The Zion Nazi thing, that bad. It's not good to talk about.
Well, we know a lot about Mossad in relation to 9/11. For example, the 5 dancing Israelis, these young men who were in Liberty State Park, New Jersey, and filming the destruction of the Twin Towers and celebrating as they did so, were later arrested in a white van from Urban Moving Systems, and they told the officer when he approached that they were not the problem, that their problem was our problem, namely the Palestinians were the problem. They were found with multiple passports and money.
Wait a minute. Hold, Jim. Come on. You're telling me that Israelis, our closest friend, our confidants, the receiver of billions of dollars each year, that these people were cheering on 911? I mean, I can't believe this conversation coming from Jim Fetzer.
Among the footage that was broadcast that very day, Anthony, and it may have even been between the two strikes on the towers, was Palestinians cheering and celebrating as though it was because of 9/11. In fact, the Palestinians were all in shock and silenced by this atrocity, as was the rest of the world. It was footage that had been taken from an earlier religious celebration and inserted to deliberately smear the Palestinians as though they had anything to do with 9/11.
When they were against it, then the other footage was put in to make it look like they were for it. I mean, it's like turning something upside down. It's like an upside down cake. Who's baking the cake?
Well, the dancing Israelis were held in custody for quite a lengthy period of time until an assistant to the Attorney General directed that they be released. They returned to Israel, and 3 of them went on television and reported that they were there to document the destruction of the Twin Towers, which obviously they could not have done absent prior knowledge. The individual who directed their release would later become the Director of Homeland Security, namely Michael Chertoff, another joint U.S.-Israeli citizen who is an ardent Zionist.
Listen, the devil's advocate here. I mean, you have to have, if you're going to have pictures of the tower and the explosions and all of this stuff, well, you can't have the explosions unless you have to have a little pre-work. I mean, some guys working on the inside. You know a fella, is it Smith or Stephen Jones? Yeah, I mean, he talks about thermite and fermate being used in there, and you see the go down, down the side of the.
A lot of the firemen reported hearing series of explosions, boom, 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 and I think they were taking out 10-floor sections at a time.
Well,
and thermite may well have been involved, but some powerful explosive over and beyond, because thermite is just a cutter charge.
Oh.
It can melt steel, but it can't bring about the destruction, blowing apart of the building floor by floor, as we actually witnessed.
Osama bin Laden and company, all of these guys were, I mean, they must have been in there working day in and day out for months setting these charges.
Osama must have been there directing himself at all personally.
He had a
and of course,
pass?
access. He had a special pass. He had a blast pass, they call it.
Now, Evergreen Air doesn't have to go through the FAA. They could have, if they decided, hell, they could put up airplanes that would go into the World Trade Center. They could, because they didn't have to be tied together.
This is one of the greatest gatherings of suspicious persons ever in the history of...
What?
At the conspiracy conference, we get them all, Anthony. You and I are here, for example. What could be more notable than that?
Well, God, another guy's going to be attacked tonight, or in the conference deal. Another guy, agent of the CIA. Whew. I mean, I've heard some rumors about you. I mean, that you're...
I'm not surprised,
you're on the
Anthony.
inside.
I've heard rumors about you, too.
No! No!
I'm not sure the rumors I've heard about you
shocked.
are the same as the rumors you've heard about me.
Oh no. Miracles never, ever cease. Shocked beyond belief. Shocked into a state of reality. Could it be that the material that's coming from Jim Fetzer? This guy was a professor. Weren't you a professor?
It could be, Anthony, for 35 years, yes. A professor of philosophy offering courses in logic, critical thinking, and scientific reasoning.
Wait a minute, aren't those outlawed?
You'd suppose they were, to judge by the amount of ability to think critically displayed by the American public, but there it is.
I thought this was outlawed. There must be some sort of law.
Some of us have been doing our part, such as it may be, to bring a bit more reasoning ability to our students.
Now,
but it's a challenge. And when you talk about miracles, Anthony, since those fires burned neither long enough nor hot enough, the idea that any of that steel could have weakened, much less melt, that was a miracle.
A military miracle.
A military miracle.
I mean, I'm aghast. I looked up at the towers coming down and go bap, 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 and then the dust came out there. How can you turn steel into dust?
And Anthony, since below the 94th floor in the north tower and the 80th floor in the south, those buildings were stone cold steel. That they collapsed at all is another miracle. And if you want a third on top of that, the steel was tapered in the building 6 inches thick at the base, 5'4", on up to the top where it was only a quarter inch. So another miracle is that the top 16 floors of the North Tower represented 1.4% of the mass of the steel, and yet it overwhelmed the 98.6 remainder below it. That is another miracle, Anthony.
Another miracle. I mean, this is the age of miracles. My God Almighty, the stuff that I'm hearing today from Jim Fetzer, professor of law, 35 years teaching logic and rational thinking and all that sort of crap. I mean, which is generally outlawed in public school, the public fool system. I mean, don't allow.
Here's another miracle, Anthony. Boeing 757 crashed at the Pentagon and left no signs whatsoever, no debris, no wings, no seats, no bodies, no luggage, not even the engines were recovered. Another miracle, Anthony.
No. Listen, I've got to correct him when he's wrong. There was, I mean, part of an engine thing. It was outside. There was. Wait a minute. It was about 3 feet wide. I saw it was about like that. Wait a minute. The 747s, right?
50.
Oh, 757s, right? They've got engines that are 9 feet across. Now, the miracle was that when this plane crashed in with these engines 9 feet across, whatever hit the Pentagon, and this is a strengthened Pentagon, whatever hit there, the two 9-foot engines reduced down to one 3-foot rotor.
It was another miracle.
Another miracle. Holy.
In fact, that component was too large to have come from a cruise missile and too small to have come from a 757. So I tell you, Anthony, what was taking place was simply physically impossible and technically, therefore, qualifies as a miracle again.
The age of miracles. Jim Fetzer's got it right in a new book. But I'm astounded. I'm shocked. I don't know what to do today.
Well, let me tell you, there was another miracle in Shanksville, Anthony. This plane that was deliberately crashed disappeared into the soft dirt. There was no indication, no debris. The two reporters on the scene said the weird part of the crashing was there was no evidence any plane had crashed there. The coroner came out there and said he didn't find a speck of blood. Some even say that it disappeared into an abandoned mine shaft. But Anthony, we know what to do with miners who are trapped in mine shafts. We get out the bright lights and they have equipment and we dig 24/7. But that by some miracle, someone may have survived, but they didn't do that yet.
Wait a minute, this was an endless pit. An endless pit. We're going to be right back. And Jim Fetzer, friend, patriot. But every time I talk to him, he talks about more and more miracles. I want him to do a story on the 9 lives of bin Laden. Dead, alive, dead, alive, dead, alive. It's more miraculous than the story about the cat. And the last time, the people said that the guy in the house was somebody else, but I said, no, another miracle. It's shape-shifting. I'm beginning to believe in this fellow out of England, David Icke. Well, bin Laden, shape-shifting. I mean, from one character to another, dying, being born, dumped in the water, coming out again.
The resurrection of Osama bin Laden is a true miracle. He actually died on 15 December 2001. There were local reports of it, obituaries, even Fox News reported his death in February of 2002. He was buried in an unmarked grave in accordance with Muslim tradition. The idea that they should have disposed of the body by dumping it at sea where it could be eaten by fish and crabs and other crustaceans is absurd. That is a violation of Muslim practice, and it was an insult on compounding the offense of faking the attack on this small home where the man who was holding the remote recorder apparently actually was the owner of the home and was not Osama bin Laden. The claim to have done DNA...
Wait. Maybe he just looked like Osama bin Laden, and they were preparing this attack for months. I mean, for like a year, they were going to stage it perfectly. You know, they're coming in on the raid and the whole thing, and they nailed this guy, right?
Well,
they nailed him.
Well, they had nearly 10 years to decide to pick the time when they were going to actually take down Osama, who, of course, had long since departed this earth. But the fact is, the whole thing was staged in such a phony way. You even have the photograph of all the staff, the vice president, the president, secretary of state, allegedly watching in real time as it was taking place.
Well, that was
until their story was blown by Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, who admitted that there was no live coverage for the 20 to 25 minutes during which this raid was taking place.
Wait a minute. No live footage. And that means they didn't see it. They couldn't hear it. But you said it exists. Another miracle.
Another miracle. And this one, too. They claim to have processed this DNA within about 12 hours when it takes much longer. DNA experts have reported that this was an absurd claim on behalf of the government, unless, of course, it was yet one more miracle.
It was one more miracle. You have faith in the CIA. Have faith in the DIA and the DAM and the FUC and the, yes. I mean, all of these organizations.
That's right.
I mean, it's breathtaking. It takes your breath away. And I guess, but if they can take your breath away, they can give breath back to Osama bin Laden.
It's amazing, Anthony. It's amazing what they've done with this. They managed to wipe off of the screen all the controversy over Barack Obama's birth certificate. They managed to vindicate keeping Guantanamo open because that's the source from which this alleged tip about the location of Osama was derived. They've justified having American forces in Pakistan, since if they hadn't been there, they couldn't have committed this triumphal raid on Osama's home and killed him, which was, incidentally, an act of murder under international law. He was entitled to due process.
Well, they were able to shoot a woman. I mean, and they said, well, the woman was getting in front of Obama, and they said, what the hell, a woman? Obama's armless? I mean, well, they said he had arms. It was a firefight, and then, well, you know.
Even the FBI, this is our own FBI, Anthony, has reported that it has no hard evidence that connects Osama bin Laden to the events of 9/11, our own FBI. So
but why was he the number one enemy? I mean, public enemy number one.
It's called public relations, Anthony. Public relations, where miracles occur on a regular basis. This was yet one more.
Oh, my God. Jim Fetzer with another story. This is just be, well, I know it's hard to believe these things. Jim.
What's hard to believe is the official account of 9/11, the official account of the death of Osama bin Laden, the official account of Barack Obama's birth certificate. There are lots of things that are difficult to believe in these days, Anthony.
Well, what do you say to those people right here? These people right there, those people. What do you say to them? They don't believe any of this. They believe it all. They believe the stories that they're told.
I say the only sources of information that are reliable today are from the internet by consulting multiple different outlets and comparing the evidence they present with what may have or may not have taken place. You can count on it. If the government tells you, it's probably false.
Wait a minute. Let's sort of ignore. I mean, let's not ignore all of the evidence, but I mean, evidence can be slanted and turned and twisted and spun. It's sort of like cotton candy. Whew.
Well, that's why
to eat.
That's why I created Scholars for 9/11 Truth, a research organization bringing experts from different disciplines together: pilots, physicists, engineers, mechanical, structural, all to contribute our resources to sorting out what actually happened on 9/11. And Anthony, it's not a pretty picture.
Wait a minute, it's not we don't paint pretty picture. It's hard to even say. A pretty picture? Do we really want to see well, I think we do want to see a pretty picture. But you mentioned an organization that you should be going to every day. In fact, I'd like to get on aircraft.org, ourenglanduk.com, commoncrime.net, Free World Alliance. I mean, we're going to get an association with this. What is this?
911scholars.org. Elias Davidson, for example, has published a piece showing the government has never been able to prove any of the alleged hijackers were aboard any of those planes. David Ray Griffin in Global Research has published articles showing all of the phone calls allegedly made from the planes were fake. Colonel George Nelson, U.S. Air Force retired, has observed that although there are millions of uniquely identifiable component parts from those 4 planes, the government is yet to produce even one.
Wait a minute. He's saying it's a fake. This guy must be some sort of agent from Afghanistan. He must be one of these Afghan cabal or Kubal agents. Maybe it's the KIA. The Cabal Intelligence Agency. I think that's. Wait a minute now.
I think it's safe to say.
Didn't I see a beard on you the last time we were around together?
If I haven't shaved, I think it's safe to say that the CIA and the neocons are the miracle workers today, Anthony, and they performed many on 9/11. And the resuscitation of Osama bin Laden is only their latest demonstration of their skills at pulling rabbits out of hats.
Or putting rabbits in them. My friend, can we use this on film?
My great pleasure. Yes, you may.
Now, were you going to give me listen?
You want the phone number?
Yeah, and how do you want to be identified?
Oh, Jim Fetzer, Dr. James Fetzer, any of the above.
Dr. James Fetzer.
Founder, Scholars for 9/11 Truth.
Boy. I don't know if I can make my, well, yeah, I think I can make my, well, come on in. I'm going to speak in a couple minutes.